All right, as at the end of 2017, the 7.9 million Nigerian youths aged were unemployed, and 58.1% of youth with jobs were underemployed. Now this, and that's according to the National Bureau of Statistics, but those numbers would have increased by now if you have to do the mathematics. Nigeria's unemployment rate is currently pegged by the NBS at 18.8%.
We have with us a lawyer and public affairs commentator, Jide Ologun. Good morning and thank you for finding time to
It's
join us.
nice to have you join us.
Good morning.
Right. And from our Abuja studio, we have the River State Resident Electoral Commissioner, Obo Efanga. It's good to have you join us right now. Good morning.
Good morning.
All right. Let's start from the studio, Jide. If we have to make comparison between 2014 building up to the 2015 election and now 2018 building up to 2019 election, if you have to compare the two when it comes to heating up the system, or how that feeling of, how is it going to be the unpredictability of it, would you say it now is better off, we've learned some lessons, or is still the same?
Yeah, almost the same, if not worse. I recall that towards the 2015, some even threatened that Nigeria would become history if a particular candidate did not win. Someone also threatened that the baboons and the monkeys would be soaked in blood, though some of these things were denied. But by the grace of God, the elections came and passed, and now we are moving towards another one. And why I said that this may be worse, we pray against it, is that even the security chiefs already alerted us about the state of insecurity in the country, particularly making reference to 2019 elections. And if you look at what is going on around the country now, and some of the elections we have used as, like, preemptive test, for example, the Osun, the Ekiti, you can feel the desperation of politicians and the fact that right now, even parties that are expected to be united are not united. So you can see the projection of selfish interest in politics. And I think by and large, we have derailed from the real essence of democracy. It started in Athens in Greece, and it's a combination of two words, demo referring to the people, and kratis meaning rule, the rule of the people. And that is why it said that democracy is the government of the people, by the people, and for the people. But right now, we are so far away from that concept, and that is why we continue to have what we have now. National interest has been driven to the back seat, and what is on the front line are greedy gains, trying to enforce your influence upon the country without positive deliverables. And that is why I am glad that it's just a phase in time, because even the countries we look forward to in terms of, following their concept of democracy, they are showing us signs of great progress. So we hope that somewhere along the line, a new leadership will emerge that we go back to what democracy should achieve, which is developing the society. And that concept hangs on economic development. And if you look at Section 16 of the 1999 Constitution of Nigeria as amended, it states clearly what the economic objectives of governance should focus on. And until we have that, we have politicians coming around to heat up the policy, and quite pitiably too, the INEC that is supposed to be independent sometimes get overwhelmed by the desperation of the politicians and the resources available to the politicians.
And Jide, for that new leadership to emerge, it would take an electoral system, for instance, an election that is taking place next year. Let's begin with the issue of vote buying. And we're taking this to Abuja now, where Obo Efanga is standing by, as INEC Resident Electoral Commissioner in Rivers State. Now, some would say that the issue of vote buying has been with us from the very first time we started voting in this part of the world. But then in 2016, it took a new dimension in Edo State, of course, Anambra in 2017, and the recent election last year in Ekiti State, where people literally had to show who they voted for to collect cash. In Ekiti, they called it see and buy. In Anambra, it was vote and show. But we've seen INEC come up with some strategies in the previous election in Osun State, restructuring the cubicle, not allowing phones into that polling booth. Just yesterday as well, the INEC chairman mentioned that there's a new measure that has been devised such that polling, the voting paper will be folded before it is handed over to the voter. And of course, when the voter is coming out of the booth, he also ensures that this paper is folded. How precisely would you say these strategies really would tackle this menace as we count down to 2019 election?
Okay, thank you very much. Like you said, yesterday, the chairman of the commission intimated us on how we're going to ensure that voters, when they vote, that they are able to conceal their ballot before dropping it in the ballot box. First of all, we should let voters know why this is important. It is important that how they vote is only known to them. And so they should prevent others from seeing how they voted. But we've seen situations where the voters deliberately want people to know how they voted because they've been offered or promised monetary compensation for voting in a particular way. So now it behoves INEC to conduct the election in such a way that even when the voter would want to expose how he or she has voted, that is difficult to do. And that is why we now say that what we're going to have is that the ballot paper would be such that it is rolled. So when it's given to the voter, it is actually rolled. And after the voter has finished voting in the cubicle, he would also roll it and then press it and then drop it in the ballot box. That way, it is not possible for people to know how he or she has voted. Remember that before now also, we have talked about redesigning the location of the cubicle far away from people who are standing around there from being able to see what is going on. But I think we should also talk about why is vote buying so popular or notorious now. This is so because the electoral process has improved in such a manner that every vote now counts. And so the outcome of an election is dependent on how people voted. And it is because of this that you have the politicians who want the votes to go their way have gone after the people who are going to vote to try to pay them so that they can vote for them. So I think that first of all, we should acknowledge that the electoral process has improved from what it used to be in the past. And so now, what do we do to ensure that the vote buying is stopped or eliminated as much as possible? That is why we, as an electoral management body, INEC, has come up with this strategy for limiting the opportunity of voters exposing how they voted. Now, there are other steps that would also need to be taken, not only by INEC, but by other stakeholders involved in the electoral process. This includes the security operatives who are around during the election. And more importantly, I think that we also need to emphasize the need for political parties and politicians to play by the rules. The politicians know that it is wrong for them to buy the votes. And so they should also put the pressure on them. Because the point is, who are those who are buying the votes? It is the politicians. And they are the major beneficiaries of the electoral process. So I think that the blame should go to the politicians primarily. But while we blame them, we also, as the electoral management body, are taking steps to ensure that even when they want to do that, we make it difficult for them to do that by frustrating the process.
All right. But we'll come back to this because when it comes to the issue of rolling the ballot paper, we have seen areas where ink will, touch one place and the other, and then it invalidates the paper. And then also the issue of voter education and enlightenment. We'll come back to this. Let's have joining us a member of the National Youth Council of Nigeria, Ikosi Sheri chapter, Samuel Omokejimi. Samuel, good morning. It's good to have you join us right now on phone. Now, the youths are said to be the majority, and they are the ones whom politicians are said to be using to perpetrate any kind of either thuggery, and even when it comes to buying votes and carrying out all sorts of things. The Nigerian youth, either we see it from the Nigeria or even the African perspective or generally, when it comes to receiving money to favor a certain kind of person, is it because they are very poor, or what reasons do you see from your perspective as being behind any voter being ready to sell his vote or her vote to vote for a certain candidate?
Yeah. Good morning.
Morning.
When it comes to vote buying, it's the reason why we are still having cases of vote buying in Nigeria is just because one, the youth have not been properly oriented, if I may say. And the reason why I say that is because if we are in a process of selecting a leader that will represent us in the next couple of years, and we all know that our life depends on the selection or the kind of leader we select. And if somebody is bringing money at this crucial time, we should know that this person have a mission. And I want to believe that before somebody can say, yeah, I'm bringing money for any reason, the person have a mission. And the mission which we don't know. The only reason why we can say somebody want to select any leader is that we must have studied the leader sometimes or some years before the election. And if somebody is bringing money, that should even give us a picture of the kind of person the person will be when he eventually emerge as a leader. Because a good leader will only empower. Because for you to build a nation, what you need to do is you have to build the youth. But in a situation whereby we are not building the youth, we are only buying them or luring them into a situation whereby they will just because they understand the situation or the economic situation of the country, they are giving out money so that you can just give your votes to them for them to achieve their hidden agenda. So the reason why the people still involved in buying votes in Nigeria is not because of the leaders. It's just because the youth themselves have not been properly oriented. There should be a symposium whereby the youth we should be properly oriented.
All right.
The reasons why. All right.
Okay. Thank you for making your point there. We appreciate you, Samuel Omokejimi.
As we begin to talk about this very big menace, counting down to general election, have we been able to really identify and define what vote buying is? On one hand, is exchanging funds for who you have voted for. But as far back as 1993, you remember that there were biscuits with pictures of candidates on there, people giving souvenirs at campaigns and all of that. Just yesterday, Speaker of the House of Reps, Honorable Yakubu Dogara, condemned the distribution of cash by the federal government, what they call the trader money, at such a very close time to election. So have we really grasped what vote buying is?
Yeah, we know what vote buying is just because we are comfortable with it. When that youth rep was speaking now, he spoke about building the youth. And I will start from there. Are we building them? You are trying to orientate someone that can appreciate your message about fleeing from selling his vote. Let me ask you a question. Is he a young man who has been displaced from the insurgents' war front, who is struggling by the roadside, who cannot even make let's say about 2,000 naira on a weekly basis, who is living below human standard, that you will now offer 10,000 naira to vote and he won't vote and snatch boxes. I challenge the leadership of this country, and I will make reference to some precedents.
But that's a very different case. It is known that you are not allowed to bring money to polling units.
Yes.
That is understandable.
Yes.
But then as we speak right now, there are controversies about, there are campaigns, you see bread, pictures of certain candidates on there. Yes. There are monies that the federal government is giving out under its social intervention fund. Have we been able, if leaders of the National Assembly seem to have a totally different concept of vote buying from the federal government, then it appears we have a problem in our hands.
You see, I'm moving beyond the interpretation of this crime. You call it anything. Dasuki Gate. The gate is just a beautiful way of expressing crime against the state. I mean, why are we selling votes? Why are we buying votes? Because we are not delivering on good governance. Do you know that a woman even started sharing flyers in the UK to give free food at Christmas? And the government said no. Because they can provide for the people. You see, so, and where is the justice system in the country? Do we not know some of the vote sellers? Have we not seen some of the vote buyers? We have even heard of sandwiches. Sandwiches is not putting sardine inside bread, putting money inside bread. We have seen parties sharing Ankara, and I ask people, for how long will you wear this Ankara? And what is the alternative cost? Medical facilities that are not available, education that is crippled, the fact that we are spending 1.4 trillion naira annually on subsidy recoverables or under recoverable or whatever we call it, the fact that we have 4 refineries that are incapacitated, the fact that out of the 700 refineries in the world, we cannot command a respectable part of the business activities going on, despite the fact that we have oil and gas in abundance, the fact that, we cannot even claim that the sustainable development goals of the United Nations that will be assessed by year 2030, that we will be there. So those basic things that should be in society are not there.
Okay.
And unless these are there, people will be vulnerable. So some have entered into the culture of, let's wait for them towards elections.
All right.
They will bring our goodies. But remember that Esau sold his birthright out of hunger. And if you don't deal with the ills in the society,
we have the same situation
you are
today.
just touching the symptoms.
Okay.
What are the foundational issues?
All right. We'll come back to that. And those foundational issues you're talking about, whether it starts with the government or it starts even from the family, it starts from the daddy and the mommy who should even groom the child to be prepared for the society. We'll take a look at that. Let's bring in Obo Efanga, the River State INEC Resident Electoral Commissioner, joining us from Abuja. Now, Obo, you talked about what INEC is doing towards towards preventing vote buying in 2019 election. But one thing is for INEC to prepare. Another thing is for the voter to understand what INEC is doing. When it comes to voter enlightenment and voter education, how much of that is going on?
Yeah, that's going on. Part of what we do is also voter education and sensitization, and we do this in collaboration with other agencies of government, especially the National Orientation Agency. We've had
the National Orientation Agency, Nigerians have not really heard from it, and Nigerians don't understand really what the National Orientation Agency is doing, if it is that one.
As a matter of fact, we work with them in some of the enlightenment programs we've had. And on radio and TV programs in Rivers State where I operate in, we have some programs together where we enlighten members of the public on the issues of the electoral process. And we talk about the issue of vote buying as one of the issues there. So I think that the National Orientation Agency has facilities and capacity because they are in all the local government areas of Nigeria, just like INEC.
Let's try to do some practical enlightenment here. Earlier you mentioned rolling of voter slip. Are you also engaging
Yes.
voters to ensure that there is no ink smear, and then that eventually
Yes.
result to voided votes and all of that? How does that really works?
Yes, yes, we are working on that. And one of the things we are doing is that the ink that is going to be used is such that would dry immediately. It won't take that long. And mind you, when we talk about how we roll the ballot, when you roll the ballot this way, so even if the ink is going to touch another part of the paper, it will touch the back of the paper. It won't touch the front where the symbols of the political parties are. So even if it touches another part of the paper, it will be the back of it. So it will not amount to an invalid vote in any way. This is what we are planning to do. And like I said, the ink we are using is such that will dry easily, not taking a long time to dry. So this is part of the enlightenment we are bringing to the process as we go into the elections in 2019. This was already done yesterday when the chairman of the commission addressed the Senate during the public hearing. So we are looking at taking this down to the grassroots as we go towards the election. The important thing we must stress is for the voter not to want to expose how he or she has voted. Now, this is a difficult thing because when you find a situation where there is a willing seller and there's a willing buyer, you have to go out of your way to make sure that you frustrate their decision to manipulate the system, because this is a manipulation of the electoral process.
Let me just
And that
quickly
is why
butt in,
we have come
Obo,
up with
because
some of
in
the-
addition to what you're saying is
Yes,
also the criminalization of vote buying and how INEC has successfully prosecuted electoral offenders in the past. Section 124 Electoral Act 2010 stipulates that anyone who buys or sells votes, of course, is liable to a maximum fine of 500,000 naira or 12 months imprisonment or even both. What is INEC doing to ensure that these issues are criminalized and offenders are indeed prosecuted? Because we hear about a lot of, electoral fraud taking place, even for governors who have eventually won in court. The best we have seen is the incumbent is just asked to leave office and nothing really as a form of a punishment is meted out on them.
Well, I think we should look at the whole gamut of the judicial system when it comes to handling this. Now, if there is an infraction of an electoral law on an election day, there are lots of people who are involved in this. It is unlikely, of course, INEC doesn't have that capability to physically be the one, INEC officials, to physically be the ones intercepting or arresting persons who are involved in this. We have the law enforcement agencies who are going to do that. So to the extent that they've arrested people and they've done the investigation and gathered adequate evidence, that is when these persons can be prosecuted. What INEC should be concerned with primarily on election day is to ensure that when people come to vote, they are accredited, and if they are the rightful people to vote, they are given the ballot papers to vote, and when they vote, these votes are counted. This is the primary reason, and the results are announced. This is the primary responsibility of INEC on election day. The other things are ancillary, and so it will not, INEC will not leave the primary responsibility and start running after who to arrest and then investigation and prosecution. That is left for the law enforcement agencies on election day.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Obo. Let me come back to you, Jide. The Joint Action Civil Society Coalition identified about 17 states where there could be electoral violence in 2019. How concerned are you with this revelation or this projection?
I'm grossly concerned, and the question we should ask, why are we having these violence tendencies? Because we are not focusing on good governance. And in 1993, we had the option A4. Without so much technicalities. Queue behind your candidate or the tokens of your candidate, and that was assessed to be the freest and the most fair election in Nigeria. But what happened? It was annulled. And until we go back to the essence of democracy, which is to develop the society, we'll be struggling with this. But you see politicians desperate now they leave from Senate, they go to be governors, they leave from being governors back to the Senate. A senator was even disclosing that he will continue to represent his people until he dies. You see, so there was one of the campaign towards primary that a politician was placing a price on the head of an opponent. So what are you inducing? You see, but by the grace of God, I belong to an NGO, Transformational Opportunities Providers, Top Foundations, and we are engaging the youth on these issues because they are the vulnerable ones.
All right.
Because quite a number of them are idle.
All right.
And they become easy prey.
Yeah, Jide, we have so much in our hands as a country and as a people. You were talking about democracy earlier on. We hope as we get along, some of these things will become clearer on how people should conduct themselves and so on. Thank you very much for coming on the program.
You're welcome. God bless Nigeria.
We also thank Samuel Omokejimi, a member of the National Youth Council of Nigeria, Ikusishere, who joined us earlier on phone. And we also thank Oboy Fanga, the River State INEC Resident Electoral Commissioner, for joining us from our Abuja studio. Thank you, gentlemen, for coming.